In 1998, two doctors quit their jobs.
Yeah.
And they started a medical software company.
Dr. Mario
And then
Dr.
they're
Robotnik.
like, this is lame. So they decided to make a video game, and they called their company Bioware because there was a doctor software company. But they made a game called Baldur's Gate, which came out December 21st, 1998. Right
with a group of 60 people who had never released a game. That entire team, that was their first game.
Now learn how to make a game for us.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what they said.
Baldur's Gate is an absolutely incredible RPG, one of the greatest RPGs ever made. But it is notable that this game, you know, tiny little characters that are smudges on your screen.
Sure.
And that came out the same year, you know, as Metal Gear Solid, as Banjo-Kazooie. Like, it felt like a game that was 5 years older than it actually was.
I think that's because the team was so inexperienced, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I also think it made up for it. You know, it had incredible depth in other ways, and it was just choosing not to display it.
But I feel like it was familiar to those who played pen and paper RPGs, right? Like, it felt more like something that harkened back to like the early days of PC RPGs and the kind of board game stuff.
It didn't even, I mean, it wasn't even referencing that. It was using that as its source material. It was set in the Forgotten Realms, which is D&D's sort of default setting, and it was using the second edition rules.
Does that mean that it was a licensed D&D?
Yeah,
game?
yeah. It used the D&D game system, and characters would show up.
So how did a team of 60 people that were from a medical software company license?
Because RPGs were pretty bleak in the late 90s, except on the consoles that we've talked about already. But you know, this was way past SSI and the Gold Box games.
Computer RPGs were not in a great place.
You'd had Diablo, which had come out before, and Fallout had been just earlier that year. But CRPGs were pretty bleak back then. I think mostly because a lot of the development potential was being realized on the FPS and RTS side, right? Where it's like, look how good graphics can be. Let's make a shooter or let's make an RTS, which is why I think the sort of aberration of having this amazing game be built on this infinity isometric, weird sprite-based engine actually worked.
I think I have a unique perspective on Baldur's Gate because I didn't play it until last year.
Oh wow!
And I knew, I mean, I'm like, I like computer games. I like Fallout. Like this, I know this game's up my alley, and I just didn't, you know, I just missed it. And it was hard. Like, it's hard to get into. It's this combination of the D&D system is really challenging to get into at that time. You know, the THACO and all of that.
Second edition had been streamlined from first edition, but it was still very hard to approach.
And it's built on this game system that's really complicated. But then just, you know, you're playing a computer game that's, you know, over 15 years old. And so that brought, I had these false starts where I would start and stop, start and stop. And finally I pushed through, and thank God I did, because it's this incredible, rewarding RPG experience. And that system of exploring these maps, these pre-rendered maps, and they start out all black, and you fill them in like an RTS game, you know, as you explore the world. And then I crisscross each little bit of the map, A, to make sure I'm not missing anybody to talk to, but B, because it's really satisfying to me to see them all filled in afterwards. And they kind of stitch together into an actual world map in some ways. The city of Baldur's Gate is probably one of the greatest video game cities ever made.
I would agree with that.
Multiple screens big there's not really any reason for there to be multiple inns except that that's realistic in people's houses that you can go into, and 9 times out of 10 there's nothing happening, but then 1 time out of 10 you'll find some smuggling operation or something weird going on.
It was just showing, though, how big worlds can be, right? Like how digital worlds are no longer these small kind of confined levels. Like you have this whole world that's open to you. So having a town with multiple inns just felt
Not
right.
just that, but like you could do what you wanted in that game. You could be who you wanted to be, and that's in contrast to like one of my other favorite RPGs is Secret of Mana. Like I love that game, but that game tells you, hey, this is what you are and this is what you're doing. And Baldur's Gate says, be a wizard, be a fighter, we don't care, be a good guy, be a bad guy.
Sounds like
and
Final Fantasy 1.
The game will sort of adapt around your values. Like whatever you bring to the game will reflect that back at you in a very like immediate, consequential way.
It's really powerful. It's not quite open because you can't just walk straight to Baldur's Gate and get in. But this game, the general consensus is that Baldur's Gate 2 is the better game. Almost everyone, you know, agrees. It's higher level D&D, etc. But it loses that sense of just wandering around in the wilderness that Baldur's Gate 1 has. You know, your war, you know, the person that's been sort of raising you dies, and then you're sent out into this world, and you can
Spoilers.
go. Well, yeah, you can go. You can go north, south, east, or west, and you know, if you go one direction, you're going to get messed up. If you go another direction, you're going to find some halflings, and just wandering around this overworld lost is incredibly fun and rewarding. Baldur's Gate, I highly recommend that you check it out. If you look at the screenshots, you'll be like, man, I don't know. But like, push through that. Use a guide if you have to. Just play this game.
So
and the things you love about Mass Effect and Dragon Age, like they're all right there. Like the DNA of that studio could not be more clear.
Not blue aliens.
It's no blue aliens.
All right, no blue aliens.
That's what I like about Mass Effect.
Okay.
I like the dialogue options. You can be a jerk sometimes. You can solve a lot of combat through dialogue. Not as much as a game like Planescape, but there's a lot of that in there.